Peace, everybody. It's Montahana. So I have a few minutes to kill. I wanted to make this video because I was just on FamilySearch.com looking up some documentation, censuses and things like that, and it dawned on me I had not made this video before. I want people to take into account the inaccuracies and just how nuanced these documentations are that we put so much, weight on. Now, I'm not talking about genetics. I'm not talking about DNA tests. I'm talking about actual paper documentation. So it's very nuanced because, like, nowadays we take for granted that, we have to get our birth certificates and all these kind of things. You have to first be able to prove you are who you said you are. You have to have proof in order to get proof and all this kind of thing, right? You go to the DMV and they tell you you got to bring all this stuff to prove that you are who you are. It was not like that back in the day, let me tell you. It was not like that. So how do I know this for a fact? I'm just giving you a few examples from my own family, right? So my West Indian family, we call him Uncle Bob because he was an elder. He was in his 90s when he transitioned about 4 or 5 years ago. And so he's actually my third cousin. He and my grandmother's parents were twins. So my Uncle Bob, I'm gonna still call him Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob, my one side of my West Indian family, Bahamian family's lineage, the surname is Chisholm, right? My second great grandmother was a Chisholm. But, and this is crazy too, actually, now I'm thinking about it. So, like I said, my grandmother and Uncle Bob, their mother, Uncle Bob's mother, and my, Uncle Bob's mother and my grandmother's father, so my great-grandfather, who was Henry. Henry and Laura were twins, but they each have different surnames. So Henry has his father, Albert's last name, which is Cornelius, which my grandmother was a Cornelius, but Henry's last name was Cornelius, and his twin, Laura, her name was Chisholm, her mother's name. It's the weirdest thing, like, how do twins have two separate names? I don't know what they were doing back in the day, but that's crazy to me. But also, so Uncle Bob's mother, Laura, being a Chisholm, he was a Chisholm. No, she was not married, mind your business. And so the nurse or the person who was to do the documentation for the birth certificate, I don't know if she didn't understand the Bahamian tongue or if she has terrible handwriting. Whatever the case is, on his birth certificate, he is not a Chisholm. He is a Chisoni. So because of that mistake, there's now a line of Chisonis in the family. But there are no Chisonis, technically, they're Chisholms. So that's one way, like, documentation can get messed up. Another way is, so now on my mother's side of the family, my mom being Afro-Indigenous, her father's mother, so my great-grandmother Elna, who raised me, she was also Afro-Indigenous. Her mom was Mohawk. Her dad, to my knowledge, was African-American or what have you. Grandma Elna, got married when she was 16. On her marriage certificate, her first husband, on her marriage certificate, she's 18. That's one. 4 years later, after that whole relationship was a bust, she had her second marriage, which was her last marriage to date. He passed away. That's my great-grandfather, Augustus. We were looking and looking for these people, all in the censuses and everything. And it turns out she decided, for whatever reason, on her marriage certificate, her name is not Elna, it is Beatrice. I don't know what's up with that. But she obviously didn't have to prove a thing. She was Beatrice, and but everything else lines up, which is how come we know that's what it was. And then my great-grandfather Augustus, he put his real information, but then he put the home, you know, places of his parents as New Jersey instead of Virginia, which on his death certificate, that's worked out. But even on censuses between the time they were married up until my great-grandfather passed away, and even on his death certificate, my great-grandmother, his wife's name is Beatrice. And then after that, she became Elna, her actual name. But actually, some information does have her. This is what I'm saying. I don't know what they were doing back in the day, but people clearly did not give a damn about all that documentation. And it never dawned on them, like, yeah, in 100 years, our descendants are gonna be taking DNA tests. Like, what the hell is DNA? They're gonna be taking DNA tests on these contraptions called laptops. Like, what is that? And they're gonna be all up in our business trying to find out information so they can be on this thing called the internet bickering about who came first and who's best and all this kind of thing. They didn't know all this issues going to be going on. But so we have to take these things into account. We have to take into account that these census takers who came to your house, just like nowadays, it's not like they're professional or anything. They were just out there going to get information. And so they would just look at somebody, and if you look like you were mulatto, they put mulatto. If they thought that you were black, they will put black. If they thought that, you know, and remember, back in the day, Italians, Russians, all these people, they had, they were tawny colored, as they call it. They had coloring to them. They weren't like the complexion that they are nowadays. And so, you know, it was just like all over the place, this so-called documentation. And also they oh God, I don't know if you have looked at any of these documents back in the day, but the spellings are like atrocious. And you know, again, with my dad's family, there are a lot of Fergusons. There are a lot of Fergusons in the family. Child, the way they spell Ferguson, all kind of crazy ways back in the day. And it's just crazy. And then also, you could, like, say if you had a friend of the family who was a doctor, and he knew that you were going to catch hell as being listed as a black person. So if you were very light-skinned, he might put you down as white or even mulatto, depending, right? Because he knew that could change the family dynamics for generations to come. Like, all these things have to be taken into account. And you have to really, really do your due diligence and really research to find truth. Because they didn't really care about truth back in the day. They cared about, let's put this on paper, and that's what it is. And also, you could go from one thing to the next. So I was watching, there was some actress, it may have, oh no, it was Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. Steven Tyler found out that he actually has African American black in his roots, because his, I think, second great grandfather was very, very light skinned. And you can follow the trail through censuses to seeing how when he was born, he was listed, I think, as a black man. Then he became mulatto, and then eventually he became white. And then he married a white woman, and then, all the kids were super light skinned and so on and so forth. you didn't have to prove anything, is my point. And so when you're out here looking at these, at these things for proof and stuff like that, you really got to go deep sometimes, and you will be super surprised at what you find. Boy, be all kind of skeletons falling out that closet. So that's my little bit. Peace.